welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put on the Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Anthony Lopez here, and he's the guy we met on the Twitter Spaces. I thought he had a lot of draft knowledge and a lot of Raider knowledge and a lot of brings a lot to the table. And I want to have him on the show and just kind of talk some things Raiders here with him. Anthony, how you doing today?
Good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had a little issues getting together, but now we're both in the same car. Now we're good to go.
Yeah, it only took what, 2 weeks?
It only took 2 weeks. So listen, people get really heated and like nuts and unrealistic and like it's like a different world when you talk about Derek Carr. So I think what I want to try to do, and I just give you my perspective, you give your perspective, and then we just like I said, like to me, nobody has to be like people get after people's throats for no reason with it when it comes to it. I feel like
it's probably the most divisive topic I've ever seen being a part of Raider Nation.
I think in sports, period. Like I mean, like you hang around.
Right.
Any of the sports fans, no other sports fans fight like that over a player fight or with or against. So I think he's. Yeah. I would put him in the solid starter category. I don't think he's a superstar. I think that what you always strive for is a superstar. I think what you really need to do is, that's why we're always behind the Chiefs. The Chiefs were smart. They went out there. Andy Reid came and he ended up getting Alex Smith. Alex Smith helped him win along the way. And then Veach saw this little known quarterback from Texas Tech tear up, making ripping throws down the field all over the place. They made the move to get Smith to go away, and then they end up coming with Mahomes. So the plan is, I guess, to extend him. In a perfect world, I'd love to go old school and just go, hey, it worked out for Flacco, play on that last year, that deal. Yeah. If you blow it, if you play great, then you play great. If you don't, then we can both part ways. You're still young enough to go somewhere and start your career over again, or you can just continue here with the Raiders if you do well in my offense. But at the end of the day, it just seems like, players are just given things, like extensions and all that stuff like that, because, teams are kind of afraid to bite the bullet. I think the Las Vegas Raiders, maybe the Oakland Raiders might have let Derek Carr go, but the Las Vegas Raiders, in my mind, are not going to be able to do that because there's a pressure to win right now in Vegas. What are your thoughts about the future of Derek Carr?
Yeah, so I one of the biggest issues I feel is that we're already in 2.0 of the Las Vegas Raiders. And so with the new regime coming in, and a lot of people are on one side or the other. It's like, well, McDaniels would have never taken, the job if he'd known that they were going to come in and trade Carr. I think they had to have known the answer of what they were going to do with Carr, at least at a limit of what they wanted to do with Carr, before they ever took the job. You would have to study that situation moving into it with any kind of head coaching regime or taking over basically the whole reins of a football team, especially with a quarterback that's in flux like this, because you look at him and what the market would dictate for his contract in order to do that. And everybody can play around with the figures. We've seen so much of the contract negotiations and how it can be like, the bonuses up front and the base salary gets low and the cap, raises and things like that. But whatever you pay Derek Carr up front, you're still on the hook for the duration of that contract. So if he struggles in a new offense, or he's struggling with adapting, or even not getting the win that you're supposed to be having if you're getting paid like that, then you're still on the hook for that contract regardless. So with the extension type of situation, it becomes, is it worth the risk to pay a guy, if it's a smaller extension, say it's a 3-year deal, is it worth the risk to pay a guy $120 million over the next 3 years? With like probably $100 million of that guaranteed. If you don't have the roster, in which many believe that just coming off a playoff year means you have a playoff team, I don't believe that. I don't think that the Raiders have a great roster, especially with a lot of the positions that they have in flux right now. with a lot of the 1 year and 2 year deals that Gruden had brought in over the last year as stopgap starters. And so it just becomes a one or the other. Are you comfortable giving Carr that type of money moving forward with the roster you think you have? Or is it best to try to find a stopgap and move on and trade him and get the draft capital out of that and then try to rebuild your whole franchise around a new franchise quarterback that you're going to be trying to find in the next couple of years? My answer, and I've maintained this, is that I would love to have Carr back on the final year of his deal, on a prove-it-year deal, if he has no guaranteed money and nothing like that, and he's just basically playing to be the starting quarterback for the future.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have another year like this year, it's kind of the answer in and of itself. I mean, the guy he's good, he's not great, and we've seen the best and worst of him, and it's just too inconsistent to be able to give that kind of money to, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it we'll see. I mean, I'm always worried about even when I jump to like a place like San Francisco where they've traded a bunch of draft capital for Trey Lance and all that stuff like that. But there's still people talking about, are they going to trade Jimmy G? I mean, they might not, because a play caller's in play there, and he doesn't. I mean, he feels like maybe he can. They made the playoffs 2 out of the 5 years there, but when they made the playoffs, they made big runs. So he might just say, "Hey, I'll hold off on it for one more year." So we'll see what happens. I mean, those two guys know what they're going to do. I think you don't take the job not knowing what you want to do with Derek Carr. So I think that
sure, and that's what I believe also. Yeah.
Yeah, so as far as that goes, I'm not gonna, spend too much time on Derek, because that can be a whole situation when you talk about Derek as a whole.
It could be its entire own episode.
Episode as far as that goes. So nothing's happened here. We'll talk
sure.
about that. We'll talk about that extension when he actually gets one, if he gets one, or if he's going to somewhere else.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting reports. Are out there right now. So that's kind of one of the issues.
Yeah. The coaching staff. We talked on talking Twitter Spaces for months. Everybody had their favorite guys. I didn't really.
Yeah.
I kind of liked the staff. I didn't know. I mean, I didn't like the head guy, but I got to give the head guy credit for putting together a staff like this, because the Raiders haven't had a staff that can play football in 2021. It's always been old school everything, old school whatever. Anthony, what are your thoughts here about what they have assembled so far? I think the latest pickup was Antonio Pierce at linebacker, coach.
They just picked up someone today, actually. They picked up an offensive assistant, I believe. Let me double check that. They just hired an assistant coaches to the running back from Minnesota.
From Minnesota.
So Kennedy Palomalu. So Kennedy Palomalu just got hired today. So I actually like the staff, and I have to give you credit too, because you're the first person that turned basically me onto the idea of Patrick Graham as the head coach, not just the defensive coordinator. And so I when I started to do some research on who that was earlier, about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, and to see like what people thought of him and what his defense has done and everything, I actually really liked taking him from New York. I think that was a fantastic move. I'm really on board with that as a defensive coordinator. And I think you hit it on the head with a modern, contemporary NFL coaching staff. It has to be now. It has to be the way the game is played now, not the way the game was played in 1999 or 2005. You have to have a dynamic offense that is willing to not just play time of possession, because time of possession is losing in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's kind of lost cause. It's just, you can't, when teams can score 3 touchdowns in a matter of a couple minutes, and they, you make one slip up on offense, and you've just given you've just given their team an opportunity to score 17 points in a matter of, the last second field goal, the 2 touchdowns in a second quarter, or even with the Raiders where they gave up 4 touchdowns in a single quarter to Patrick Mahomes. Granted, that's very rare, but at the same time, it's like teams are scoring at almost at will, and you have to have an offense and a defense that's willing to be adaptive to that. And the Raiders have not had that in a long time. I would argue the last time that they did have that was that really, really adaptive offense. And a lot of people are going to laugh at this, but Hugh Jackson in 2011.
I won't laugh at it.
Was the last time I feel like
I love Hugh Jackson as a play
like
caller with the Raiders.
that the way he built the passing game around how explosive Darren McFadden was, opening up the lanes with McFadden and Michael Bush. I thought that was one of the most brilliant strokes of head coaching genius I've seen in a long time with the Raiders. And granted, fell apart. He was fired from Reggie McKenzie when came in because they were going to tear down the whole thing, and he had his problems, as an understatement, in Cleveland. But I mean, just that type of offensive ingenuity that he had. He saw a superstar in Darren McFadden, and he used him that way. Mm-hmm. And we just haven't had an offense like that. And I would argue we haven't had a quarterback like that. But like I said, that's a horse with a different color, and it's a tale for another story, you know.
Yeah, as far as that goes, I'm talking to Anthony Lopez here on the Put On Raiders podcast. We're talking Raiders here, of course. As always, on this channel, on the Put On Waivers Media channel, we have USC football and Raiders. So we're Fight On, and we are Raider Nation as well. So yeah, I mean, I do like the adaptiveness of it. I think the week-to-week game plan is something that I think you know, obviously that famous interview we saw with Patrick Graham where they say, you know, hey, are you 3-4? Are you 4-3? He says yes to all of it. Yeah, all of it. I think that's great. I mean, when you have people like, you know, a senior assistant, you're seeing people like, you know, Brian Flores, who should not be a senior assistant on any team or be a linebacker coach on any team. He should be a head coach.
Sure.
At the very least, be a defensive coordinator. But you know, Rob Ryan is the senior defensive assistant. I mean, listen, say what you want about Rob Ryan, but family of Ryans, blitzing, all those things like that. I look at him more of a kind of like almost a blitzing specialist with Patrick Graham.
Yeah.
Patrick Graham is better than Gus Bradley, but they don't blitz. The blitz rate is around the same, but the effectiveness of what Graham does is way better than that as well. Michael Lombardi Mitch Lombardi comes over for the offensive coordinator, which is gonna be like, you know, him and for Josh McDaniels. I'll say this: remember the Gruden presser? I changed. I got all this stuff going on. This did that.
Yeah.
I learned from everybody else, right? All stuff like that. So here's what I like about the staff. Number one, this staff and even the front office is a staff in the front office where these guys they're diverse by race, they're diverse by age, they're diverse by experience. And some of these guys on this staff and in the front office might not be here when you and I talk a year from now because they're so good at their job. So I mean, that's what I really like about it. That's the one thing he took away from I think Belichick here is it's like Belichick always has young bucks ready to go take jobs or ready to kind of push the envelope. What are your thoughts about that part of it in a league where, like, you know, that may not be the case sometimes?
Yeah, 100%. Patrick Graham is one guy that I can see getting a head coaching opportunity in the next 2 years for sure, especially if he comes in and takes his defense to a top 12, a top 13 finish. You know, the guys are going to, you know, highly respect him, especially taking that guy behind you there to the next level in Max Crosby. I think that's going to be tailoring this defense around the young stars that we have already in the making. I would argue Max Crosby's already a star, but like Trayvon Merrick is a guy that I absolutely love. Divine Diablo had a really good finish to the season. Maybe he can be something. Yannick Ngakoue is going to be there regardless next year because of his contract situation. And he had a pretty good season. We expected a little more coming in with the money that you shell out to moving into the 2022 season, but maybe he'll have an increase in that as well. So there's some players and pieces there that I think are going to be good for Patrick Graham to work with, and I think they're going to invest heavily into the defensive side of the football this offseason as well.
Yeah, no question about it. So let's go to the third topic. Probably will be like the draft needs. So I don't know how what order you have it, but I do have I have a left tackle, cornerback, defensive tackle, because basically there are none on the roster, and then linebacker, and then wide receiver. I feel like if you get the way they use running backs, and I think running back might not be out of the realm possibility either in a draft. With the way the Patriots do their stuff there. What are your thoughts about? Give me a couple of guys who can fill maybe the tackle role, or maybe cornerback, defensive tackle. Who are some of the guys you're looking at who could really help the Raiders here?
So tackle right now, if we're looking at the 22 spot or even in the next couple rounds, there's a guy that I really, really, really like in that spot named Trevor Penning. And Trevor Penning is a monster offensive lineman. He comes from Northern Iowa, I believe. And every time you see the guy's tape, every time you look at this guy, he's 6'7", 330. He is a predominantly left side tackle, but we're gonna have to find a guy who can play both sides of the line anyway. And every single time you see the guy's tape, he basically just wants to drive his defender off of the football field by any means necessary, and it's nasty. He plays beyond the whistle, is what they say. He plays through the whistle, but this guy plays beyond the play and beyond the whistle. He just wants to embarrass every single player that he comes up against, and I think it's a beautiful way to play offensive linemen. We need a tackle. Tackle is one of my top needs for them. Basically, there's 3 solid holes on the offensive line, and you can make the case that center is also a need as well. I didn't really like the way Andre James has played, even though he wins the toughness award for playing all the snaps. That's great, but you also have to play well. And I just didn't think he was consistent enough to warrant the guaranteed starting position next year. But yeah, Trevor Penning is one. And then there's another guy, a gigantic human being, probably the biggest player in this entire draft. He hails from Minnesota. Let me get his name for you. I was just looking him up just earlier. And when someone said you need to look at this guy because it's outrageous how gigantic he is, and you need to look at the tape. It's Palele, I believe his name is.
From Minnesota.
Let me look real quick. Yeah, I had it on here, but for some reason I don't have it anymore.
I can find it for you. Let's see here. Let's go to.
Okay, his name is Daniel Faalele. From Minnesota. So this man stands at like 6'9", almost 6'9", and 390 pounds. He is a gigantic human, but he doesn't come with the medical records, is what I was looking at first. Every time someone shows me something that big, I always look, well, is he hurt? Can he be hurt? Is there an opportunity for him to play the full 17-game season? I mean, what are we looking at in terms of this guy? He has pretty clean medicals coming from being that big. But I think that's a project that you can work on probably in the 2nd to 3rd round. I don't think any of the top 4 tackles are going to follow the 22 spot. So like Charles Cross, Evan Neal, obviously, and all the top guys. But I think Trevor Penning is one guy that can follow there. Maybe Kenyon Green can follow there if you're looking at a guy at the 22 spot.
All right, and what do you got for? Let's see here. What are the positions of need? What do you think about Roger McCreary?
I like Roger McCreary. I had him mocked as our 2nd round pick in one. I've done like 150 mocks so far. That was one of the first mocks that I did was Roger McCreary in the 2nd round. There's a guy named Trent McDuffie in the 1st round. That if he falls to there, he's from Washington. I know everybody's really hot on Ahmad Gardner and Derek Stingley. I really believe that Trent McDuffie is going to be the best cornerback in this draft. And if he falls to 22, I think that should be the pick. I know people are weary of the 1st round pick corners now. We've just burned through a lot. I would say this century. But you got to keep picking him until you really hit on one. And I really like him. People ask me who I thought he looked like and reminded me of. Yeah. Go ahead.
Even at 5'11"?
Even at 5'11". So I don't. I try not to hold the size of a corner against him as long as I feel like he plays bigger than he is. Trayvon Merrick, I don't think is a big enough free safety, especially in the roving position where he's quality and run support. Another thing was like when people talk about John Abrams converting him to a linebacker position, I don't think he plays bigger than he is. I think he plays exactly the same size he is. I think he overextends a lot. But some of these guys, when I look at him like 5'11", 195, 198 pounds, if they play bigger than they are, when you look at the game tape, I really believe that they're worth picking in that position. And he's one that I think is an outstanding player. from Washington. I think he's fantastic. I don't think he'll be there at 22, but I think he'll be better than Gardner, and I think he'll be better than Stingley in the long run.
All right, I'm gonna roll through a couple positions here. Wide receiver, I don't think. Let's just say they save it for later rounds, maybe in second round. Is there a guy who can kind of take a? I feel like they might go out there and get some better wide receivers. Is just renew the offense. But is there a guy who's a little bit later who can take the top off, make those safeties back up a little bit?
Yeah, so there's several guys that I really like that I think are coming up that they might find in that second to fourth round range. The first one I'm going to say is Skye Moore. Skye Moore is he kind of reminds me of an Odell Beckham. I mean, obviously he's not that good coming out of college. He's not as explosive downfield. But I really really liked his game tape coming in. I don't know if you've seen him, but he's from Western Michigan. He had 95 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns last year. I think he's explosive across the middle. He's an unafraid wide receiver, which is you don't get a lot. You get the alligator arms a lot of the time. He's kind of fearless when he comes through. I think he can run all the routes. I think he can run the out route, and I think he can be a possession receiver, even though I feel like he's pretty explosive on the back end. I think yak yardage is more important now than direct explosive downfield yardage, like a Justin Jefferson type or like Jamar Chase. I think a guy who can get the ball in his hands and start producing after the catch is more important, I think, nowadays with today's dynamic offenses. You look at the best wide receivers in the NFL right now, and they're all masters of the yak. They're all masters of the yards after the catch, which is one thing that I do agree with John Gruden about. The yards after the catch is super important, but you can't design an entire offense around it, which unfortunately is what he did.
Yes, you can't.
Another one I really like is Calvin Austin.
Okay.
I think it's Calvin or Calvin. But yeah, so Calvin Austin from Memphis is someone who I think is another one of those guys that I don't want to say little man complex, but it almost kind of is in that situation for a couple of these guys. He's 5'9", he's 165 pounds. It's super small, but he's incredibly dynamic. He was incredibly dynamic for Memphis. He's a great athlete. He can be in the spread. You can get him into the slot. You can get him into the inside slants. You can get him into the jet sweeps. The other guy I like is Wandel Robinson from Kentucky. Another guy that fits those roles, that kind of joker role where you can play him on the inside, you can play him in the slot. He has the speed and the explosiveness to play the outside to take the top off the defense, as well as being kind of a jet runner or maybe even a gadget runner in the red zone offenses, which is one place where the Raiders have really struggled.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. We're gonna wrap it up on this last note. Defensive tackle. The Raider fans are just all they do is talk about Jordan Davis, but you got to think about what Patrick Graham has in his 3-4 ready to go.
Sure.
I'm not sure he's the guy who you'd be looking for. Can you give me a defensive tackle for Raider Nation to look at?
Yeah, I can give you several. I know people are all on that as well. It's one thing that I understand. I'm not on board with taking a guy that big in the defensive tackle position. I understand because the nose tackle position is important in the 3-4, but I think it's going to be a more flex nickel than anything. And I think there's going to be 4 down linemen or at least 3 down linemen with 2 overhead rushers a lot of the time. And so there's a guy that I really like. I think his Georgia teammate is the best guy on the defensive line right now. I think Devontae Wyatt from Georgia is absolutely fantastic. He's 6'3", 307 pounds. He runs a very quick 40 at 4.8 right now. We have to wait for his pro day, but his unofficial right now is listed at 4.87. I think he's explosive. I think he's mean. I think he's physical. And I really feel like the Raiders could get him and steal him in the second round. I really believe that. I think that if DeMarvin Leal and Jordan Davis fall out of the top 10, which I think they both will, and you can get them in the back teenage range, then I think Devontae Wyatt is for sure going to be fall back into the second, and that's a guy I would trade up in the second to get. Another one I really like is Perrion Winfrey from Oklahoma. I think you were the first person that turned me on to Perrion Winfrey in one of the spaces. I think you sent me something from him. But he was a junior college defensive tackle at first. and then came out from Oklahoma and actually had a really, really great career there. And now he's going to be a borderline second, third rounder. That's another guy I really like in the interior position. That's one of my top needs for the Raiders. I like wide receiver, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, and basically everybody in the secondary. I would draft a lot of people from the secondary because there's some really, really good ones in this draft.
Yeah. Hey, listen, and as you can tell, this is one of the reasons why I wanted Anthony on the show, because he gives that draft is in his back pocket. He knows that he knows it cold. So I definitely appreciate that. So until next time. So hey, we'll have you on next time as we get closer to the draft. And I know I'll see you in Twitter Spaces. Can you tell people where they can find you on Twitter so that we can get some of that draft stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I am at the @ansolo_. My name is Anthony Lopez. I do mock drafts. I'll do top 10s. I'll do top 20s. I'll do full 7-round mock drafts. As we get closer to the draft, I will start releasing all of my 7-round mock drafts. I'll start releasing all of my top 15, top 20 players. And before free agency, I will have a full off-season primer for the Raiders, and I'll write out my entire offseason. I like to do it every year before all moves are made, so I can kind of go back and gauge and look about who was right, what did I hit on, what did I miss on, things like that, and what did I think that would have been best for the Raiders. So I'll have a full Raiders offseason primer before free agency starts.
All right, Anthony, thank you for joining us here on the Put On Raiders podcast.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you for having me on.
See you next time, brother.
See you, buddy.